When I watched the scenes of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky being publicly dressed down by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at the White House, I felt pretty sick. I know I'm not the only one who was shocked and saddened by what can only be described as bullying behaviour, the lack of empathy, the attempts to humiliate and intimidate, and that smirking, childish arrogance left me feeling embarrassed and ashamed, not for Zelensky, but for those entrusted to know and be a whole lot better than that. This kind of bullying affects not only its direct targets, but also those of us who witness it. You know, many people felt the sting of observing that incident for a whole variety of reasons. So how ought we respond when we see and hear things like this, which might have a particular personal resonance for those who have been on the receiving end of these kinds of power abuses themselves in life? I was always told growing up that bullies often operate from a place of insecurity, you know, masking their sense of inferiority with a facade of superiority. I was really struck by the hypocrisy in the accusations made about disrespect, which is obviously a classic charge made by someone who feels insecure in a situation. By inviting that question about Zelensky's clothing, a choice that he's openly described as a show of solidarity with his Ukrainian people during wartime, there was ignorance there, willful or otherwise, to the traumatic reality being lived every day by this person sat before them. Bullies often lack emotional intelligence in this sense, let alone respect to the humanity of other people, choosing to smirk and belittle rather than empathise and understand and connect. Obviously, this kind of behaviour isn't confined to political settings. I don't want to make this about that one incident. It's got a flavour of situations many of us will have experienced, encountering bullies in different areas of life. Perhaps a boss who publicly humiliates or undermines an employee, a colleague who sabotages others by withholding critical information deliberately or setting people up for failure, or a family member who uses emotional blackmail or guilt to coerce and manipulate. The dynamics are often similar. A pathological need to dominate, a pattern of intentionally misrepresenting someone's words, obsessively pulling apart everything that somebody might do, and an active sense of enjoyment from causing a person harm or distress. A bully arrogantly attempts to humiliate and intimidate. This is not a show of strength, but it's a reflection of that deep-seated insecurity and weakness. This reflects a distinction that we might make between arrogance and confidence. Arrogance, as I see it, is insecurity dressed up as superiority. It's the need to dominate, to belittle, to control. Confidence, on the other hand, is being secure in who you are and the path that you're on. And it doesn't need to tear others down in order to feel a sense of its own strength. I'll be honest, this incident stirred a quiet rage in me. Something was disturbing about watching a leader like Zelensky, who's shown immense courage and grace in the face of the invasion of his country, being treated with such disdain and disrespect. So what do we do when we witness events like this? It's easy to get caught up in that emotion and stay there, but it's more important to pause, to process, to channel those feelings into constructive actions. Feeling what you feel, like anger or sadness or disappointment or outrage, is fine. It's okay. And it's important to express the energy of those feelings in non-destructive ways. Maybe it's screaming across the sea if you need to do that, or sitting down at a drum kit and taking it out on that, exercising your body, maybe some high intensity workout or something, or maybe just throwing something somewhere, whatever it might be that sort of just helps to release the energy of that emotion and connect with others who share your values and can offer that sort of emotional grounding, that support. Temporary venting and ranting with people that you trust can provide a real kind of healing catharsis, as long as everybody's comfortable with it and knows what to expect. It can be a helpful part of that process. And then turning pain into active hope. So I recently spoke about this with Cindy Gale, who shared the framework, the Active Hope work that reconnects framework, that helps to sort of process thoughts and feelings in the face of our changing world. And you go through those 4 stages of gratitude, honouring our pain, seeing with new eyes, and going forth. And this can be a really good scaffolding to help us turn that feeling into constructive action in a way that works for us as individuals. So this incident is not just about politics, it's about human behaviour, and it's about the world that we create through what we tolerate and amplify and emulate. What kind of example do we want to set, to promote and to adhere to? Strong and healthy leadership protects the weakest. It respects differences and it fosters a spirit of collaboration. It listens and it learns. It communicates with clarity and honesty, and it's guided by foundational collective principles that transcend personal ego, pride, and selfish ambition. We should demand these qualities from our leaders in every walk of life, as we strive also to embody them for ourselves. As I was reflecting on this stuff earlier, an email dropped into my inbox from Sage Justice, and the email subject was maturity. It's just one word. And she shared an excerpt from a poem that was taken from her Freedom Book 1. And it really captured and spoke to what I was thinking and feeling at that moment, and so beautifully reflects the foundations from which this situation has been able to arise. And it got me thinking, we've got to make this kind of thing unwelcome and impossible on our watch. I'm convinced that when push comes to shove, the majority of human beings would choose a very different model of leadership to the one that we just keep seeing arising over and over in the world around us. Like the stories coming from workplaces and communities and these places where leaders are displaying a very toxic type of leadership. And it's not necessarily about the positions they take or the beliefs they have. It's about the way we engage. And so we need to be those voices that speak up into these situations to demand a better and a more mature way of leading and carrying us forward. It's not the liberal left or conservative right where all the problems begin. It's the lack of maturity with which people resolve differences that's created this sin. People have lost their ability to reason, listen and care. To respectfully engage in discourse is all too rare. I refuse to play part to the mentality of us versus them. I see the wholeness of humanity in the oneness within. This isn't idealistic spiritual speech. It's dialectic thinking, wisdom every great leader doth teach. We can lay the boundary and some ground rules to guide us through any conflict storm, commit to expressing ourselves without engaging with the proverbial bullhorn. Acknowledge that it is possible to have the courage of one's convictions without resorting to engaging in eviscerating maledictions. The guidelines are simple. Set emotions aside and embrace critical thought. Compare our research side by side to discern which facts are not. State our case and then prepare to listen deeply. Ask clarifying questions to allow understanding completely. Replace judgment with curiosity. Let the knowledge marinate before reacting with animosity. End every discussion by respectfully agreeing to disagree as the case may be, with a promise to change the subject if things get too heated, thereby forcing the other to want to flee. Use the radical candor method to communicate. Care personally and challenge directly. Above all, no personal attacks. For what the world needs now is maturity. There is no solution in continuing to further divide. We have to come together, build bridges from each side. Mistreatment gives us permission to walk away free and clear, clean. But when it comes to conflict resolution, has walking away ever solved anything? It's the very fact that people are unwilling to brave the minor philosophical earthquakes in union that has caused the seismic destruction of humanity's moral foundation and ruin. We will never achieve peace and grow if we continue to harvest discord through the rage we sow. It does no use to demonize the uncontrolled wild, for in times of great tumult we must treat each other as we treat the child, with endless forgiveness, patience, understanding, love and care, yet still within the realm of healthy boundaries, self-restraint and the agreed upon rules of mature conduct that we lay bare. With moral courage and respectful conscientiousness, we can discern fact from fiction to focus on righteousness. There will always be areas of contention, But without dialogue and an exchange of ideas, they become exaggerated, distorted, and the difficult conversations that go unmentioned. This polarised, dismissive way of communicating is what's tearing our world apart, not the conflicting beliefs which can be navigated, negotiated, and taken to heart. A little maturity goes a long way to resolution, but it requires humility and self-care to get to that solution. Certainty is an addiction, a drug we all must face. In the name of understanding, it's the balance of confidence and humility that wins the race. A person who can't control their temper is living under 9,000 pounds of pain. The abusive attacks they lunge at others are the way they deal with shame. The cure is recognition and release. We can teach each other tools that bring peace. It takes commitment to learn a new way to be. It's a shift in modus operandi from impulsive to maturity. Maturity is a practice and a conscious state of mind. It's the removal of self-destructive coping mechanisms that keep us misaligned. If every irritant within ourselves leads us to fight, fly, freeze, fawn, spend, smoke, drug, become withdrawn, game, sex, eat or drink, then every irritant in another will lead our boat to sink. Maturity is the act of slow and careful consideration. It comes from years of facing fears and employing emotional regulation, acting with vulnerable courage instead of embracing evasion. It is the practice of sitting in the eye of the storm to see all sides. It is the calm that breeds in us, a healthy sort of pride. Maturity is contagious. It's soothing and infectious. Its nature is firm leadership that sits quietly in our solar plexus. It's the state of being triggered without impulsive reaction. Through the practice of stillness, we find resistance, traction. We don't allow ourselves to be pulled into hypnotic confrontation that is seething. When we engage the art of self-care via mindful presence and deep breathing, maturity breaks through the chrysalis of our youth, and as we breathe through the chaos, we begin to hear the greater truth. Anything is possible when we learn to listen and receive, when we can let go of the attachments to what we choose to believe, when we become fast to understand and slow to combat. We have what the world needs now: maturity, sweet maturity, blowing at our back.